Hey there, and welcome back to my seed starting station. You know, it's probably no secret that I'm a little bit obsessed with growing tomatoes, but the truth is, an amazing tomato garden outside has to start with the healthiest possible tomato seedlings inside. So today, before we ever start these tomato seeds, I'd like to share with you my 3 secrets learned over the years from reading tomato growing research for taking your seedlings from good to amazing. Before we can actually plant any tomato seeds, we need to talk about a slightly uncomfortable truth. And that is, most tomato seedlings started at home are actually doomed to failure, or at least mediocrity, from the moment we plant the seed. And that's because most planting calendars actually recommend that you plant your tomato seeds way too early, like way too early, y'all. Now, last spring, I actually did a little experiment looking at what a big difference timing makes with regards to the health of our tomato seedlings. And I actually recorded a little short video on that if you want to check it out. But the short story is, if you plant out your tomato seedlings, if you put them outside too early when it's still too cold, that's going to lead to irreparably stunted, unhealthy plants, and subsequently really small harvests. And the core problem here is actually pretty simple. See, planting dates or planting calendars are generally based around the first or last frost date in your area. And that actually works really well for a lot of crops, but it's all wrong for tomatoes. For tomatoes, what we actually care about are our overnight low temperatures. This right here, basically the coldest temperature of the day. That is the key variable that we need to pay attention to when determining when to place outside our delicate tomato starts. So this year, instead of just grabbing a planting calendar and getting started, here is what I want you to do. Pull up a website with historical weather data like Weather Underground and find the day of the year where your area's overnight low temperatures typically start clearing 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. And if you're having a hard time finding this information, I'll put a link in the description as well. Okay, let's take a look at Dallas, Texas as an example here. Looking at this, you can see that Dallas's overnight low temperatures start clearing 50 degrees Fahrenheit somewhere around a little bit after mid-March. That date right there is where we would want to target for our actual transplanting, the date that we'd actually want to take our seedlings and plant them into the ground outside. Assuming you lived in Dallas, which I do not. Where I'm at, this method puts my transplant date somewhere around April 20th. That is a full 6 weeks, a full month and a half later than the average planting calendar recommends. And trust me, y'all, those extra 6 weeks make a huge difference in the health of your tomato seedlings. And to find out which day you should actually be planting your tomato seeds in some dirt, just dial back about 6 weeks before that transplant date that you just identified. Or if you live somewhere on the cooler side with long winters and short growing seasons, go ahead and plant your seeds an extra 2 to 3 weeks earlier, so 8 to 9 weeks before that transplant date. But you're gonna need to plan to pot up once more for a second time from that container like this, all the way into a pretty large container like this. In any case, regardless of whether you do 6 weeks or 8 weeks ahead of time, this one change to shift out your seed starting and your transplant time is going to make a huge positive difference in the health of your tomato seedlings. This right here is just a totally standard seedling heat mat, and generally speaking, it is used to speed up germination time, the amount of time it takes from planting a seed until that seedling emerges, until it germinates. But it's good for a lot more than just germination, because just like germination time is directly dependent on heat, how fast your seedlings grow after they've already germinated is also a function of soil temperature. Up to a point, warmer soil will mean faster growth. But the thing is, fast growth doesn't always equal good growth. Really fast growth, like you're gonna see in really warm conditions, that's generally not actually sustainable in the artificial indoor conditions on a seed starting rack under LED or fluorescent lights like these ones right here. Hey there, sorry for the interruption. If you think this video is gonna be helpful for you this year in growing better tomato seedlings, would you mind hitting the like button down there real quick? It just really helps us out. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And let's get back to the tomato talk. Have you ever been in a situation where you're growing your seedlings and you find that they are growing weak and leggy, but seemingly for no reason. Well, there's a very good chance that that reason is the plants were receiving more heat, specifically more bottom heat, heat from underneath, than the amount of light they were receiving could actually support. So we often talk about seedlings growing leggy because they are not getting enough light, but what we should be talking about, at least to some degree, is the balance between light and heat. A lot of times they're simply getting more heat than that light can support. So here's the deal. Tomatoes grown indoors do best grown at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit or about 21 degrees Celsius during the day, and about 60 degrees Fahrenheit or about 16 degrees Celsius during the night. Really, if you think about it, not that different than the temperatures you and I like it at. Which means if you're growing indoors with a thermostat set to a temperature that's comfortable for you, you probably want to go ahead and just turn those heat mats off after most of the seeds have finished germinating. The problem with leaving the mats on after germination when you're growing indoors is you're pretty likely to raise those soil temps up into the 80s. And what that's gonna do is just result in leggy, poor, fast growth. On the other hand, if you're like me and you're growing in an unheated space, like the garage I'm currently standing in, well, you're gonna need to make some changes throughout the season to accommodate the changing temperatures outside. So for instance, when we get started with our tomato seeds early, mid-spring, it's still pretty cool in here. And that means for the first 2 to 3 weeks, I'm gonna go ahead and leave these heat mats on all the time. I won't unplug them at all for the first couple weeks. Then during mid-spring, as temperatures start warming up outside, particularly during the day, I'll go ahead and turn off the mats for about 2/3 of the day and leave them on just at night. And I make that easy on myself by using these automated timer plugs that I got off Amazon for like $5. Definitely recommend picking up a couple of these. Then about a week before I actually start hardening off my seedlings outside, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat mats entirely just to help prep them for that next phase of their life. By the way, that last step where you let your tomato seedlings kind of get used to the cooler temperatures they'll soon be subjected to, it's actually really important, so try not to skip it. Kind of think of it like a pre-hardening off phase. The one thing we haven't talked about yet is lighting, which I'm told is quite an important thing for plants and for videos. Here's the dirty little secret when it comes to great lighting for our tomato seedlings. It does not have to be the guessing game it's often made out to be. Actually measuring how much light and how much energy our seed starting area receives from lights just like this one is surprisingly simple. And we can quantify that energy and compare it against what researchers have found to be optimal. See, cameras, like the ones in our phones, have sensors to detect the brightness of a scene and adjust their settings to take photos and videos that are neither too dark nor too bright, but just right. How's this looking? Right now, you can go check how much usable light your seedlings are going to receive on whatever seed starting setup you have got going by using nothing more than the phone in your pocket, using one of these apps that were specifically made for plant growers to tell us how much light our plants are actually going to receive or are receiving. And by far my favorite one is this one right here called Photone. It's got a super good free tier, and no, I'm not associated with them in any way. All you need to do is open up the app and click the bottom right here and select the type of light that you are using. I'm using these LED strips right here. They're super bright. As you can see, I've got a video about how to set up a seed starting system, by the way, if you want to check that out. These ones right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select LED lights right here. You can select sun, you can select different types of fluorescent light, whatever it is. And then we're just gonna go ahead and swipe over once so that it is showing daily light integrals as the unit, or DLI. Now the cool thing about daily light integrals, the DLI value, is that it takes into account both the strength of the light as well as how many hours per day the light is actually on. And that's really what we care about. How much light per day our little seedlings receive, not just the, not just the strength of the lights. So typically I set mine to about 18 hours on and 6 hours off, and then I'll adjust from there. And if you're using sunlight, sunny window for instance, don't worry about it. Go ahead and go down here and select sun. It's the very last option under the light types. And then of course, go ahead and just adjust the number of hours to match how many hours of sun your spot actually receives. So again, I'll go ahead and put mine to LED right here and then have it on as 18 hours, and that gives me a good baseline. Then to test it out, just go ahead and put your phone facing up right about where the plants are actually going to be germinating. So early on, that's basically going to be at the soil line. And what we're looking for is a DLI value of at least 15. 15 is really going to support those young seedlings and their growth, and they do need a fair bit of light. If Photone is showing a DLI value of below 15 for your seed starting area, you're gonna need to either add additional lights to your setup or leave them on longer per day. Just keep in mind that even plants prefer some period of darkness every day to grow healthily. I kind of consider 20 hours on and 4 hours off as the max I'm willing to go up to. And that is it for today. I really hope these tips help you grow an amazing tomato garden this year. And as always, I hope to see you on the next video. Until next time, happy gardening, y'all.